Now it's time to do a bit of comparing. This is my original Prisoner of Azkaban Hogwarts Castle model. I know I originally said that I wouldn't be keen on showing this model on camera, but the damage that was done after an accident is, to be honest, only really minor. It's to this part here. If you see a funny little colour bit there, yep, almost half of the top of the gold plate dome came off in pieces. The pieces went everywhere and were unable to be stuck back on. And there was also, you might just be able to pick it out between those bits there, quite a nasty mark which doesn't seem to want to rub off. Okay, now you may be thinking, okay, how minor is that? She still ran, of course, but as I said before, over the years, this locomotive, this Hogwarts one, has not been the most reliable of performers. Once again, we did have to take her apart once, because I'm pretty sure it was something to do with the connecting part from the pony truck going into the driving wheels. Just don't think. Well, my dad reckoned it wasn't touching properly, and I haven't really had my hopes up or been relying on it. Well, been relying on it to run properly and smoothly, like she was running pretty bad. Not last time, the time before when I first got her out, but she seemed to smoothen up after running her at high speed. But there was a lot of HM2000 control light flickering, so there was obviously something funny going on. But having said that, this has definitely been one of my top favourite models. She's been brilliant through the 8 years that I've had her. And that damage there may seem, pretty minor, but I'm sure some of you out there will agree with me. It can be quite disappointing, and in my opinion, I do not like running a model, running one of my top favourite ones, especially based on a movie-style locomotive running around, even with minor damage like that, which was unable to be repaired. As I was saying, she's a 2004 Prisoner of Azkaban model. Once again, here's her box. And again, 2004, of course, was the year I got this locomotive. But despite that damage, and despite, really not that much hope about her running being improved, at the moment, I decided to bring this engine out of its box another time to have a look at. Only this time it'll be, as I said at the start of the video, it'll be compared against a newer Hogwarts Castle locomotive based on the Order of the Phoenix made in 2007. The matching rolling stock is, of course, the Mark I Hogwarts Express coach. This is one of the brake ones, of course, with the same Hogwarts rail. What looks like the British Railways logo is really the Hogwarts Railways on both sides, and of course has Harry Potter, TM, and Warner Bros. Underneath. The carriage is also based on the Prisoner of Azkaban, along with the older Hogwarts engine model. With these two models side by side with each other, there is a small amount of changes being done from 2004 to 2007. One change on the Order of the Phoenix 2007 model is the front light. The older one doesn't have this. I'm pretty sure the light was only really brought along and put onto the model when they brought the Order of the Phoenix train set or locomotive out just by itself in 2007. So, to be honest, not really that long. Only a couple of years. Another quite surprising difference is their red liveries. Looking at them from this view, we can see that the red livery on the newer 2007 model is actually lighter and much more duller than the slight darker and more of a shine effect on the older one. Very similar thing with the middle gold coloured dome. Now you might not be able to pick it up that well on camera here, but just like the red livery on the older one, it's got the gold colour on the dome has got quite a shine to it, whereas on the newer one, it's more duller. The same with the red on the tenders as well. The cabs are identical as well, a good amount of space to stand a small crew. Another noticeable difference is the stripe parts. Well, the slight sort of really orange, well, more orangey colours on the joint parts of the front of the boiler. On the long cylinder part, of course, which on the older one are very noticeable, especially from a distance like this. Done on quite thick, in a fairly strong orange colour, and really stand out from the red colour on the body. The newer one's different here. Practically no orange on there at all. More of just what looks like a darker tinge of red painted on the raised joint parts. And to be honest, barely noticeable from a distance. Well, with the light coming in here, all you can really pick out is just the raised parts of the boiler part joints. The whistles and safety valve areas look pretty much identical on both models and seem to have the, well, pretty much have the same shade and the same shine. Well, with light shone on them, of course. They also both have exactly the same amount of coal. Both and all Hogwarts models coming with the wrench shape coupling for the tender to go into. The cylinder inside the slot between those two tiny buffers. The bronze part being the connection for the pickups on the tender. And fits together like this. Just be careful though, because they can be quite stiff to put together, so just take your time. And make sure the plastic and bronze parts stay together with each other and don't come apart. Another very noticeable difference is their motors, which on both models are totally different, mainly in sound really. Here's a clip of the older model, running with the audio track on, and as you can hear, and this is the same with this follows for the green Hornby Castle locomotive, which I have as well, of course, with the Western Pullman. And as you can hear, the motor in this one is pretty loud. And as I said before, despite being loud, does have sort of describe it as a fairly realistic chuffing noise to it. The newer one, on the other hand, is much more quieter and sounds much smoother. Now, I never knew this, but subscriber Bristol Spotter HD put down something like, well, he believes that the older ones, well, really, it of course would be all the older Hornby Castle class locomotives with the noisier motors like this older Hogwarts one and the Hornby Castle one are powered by something like what's called a Ringfield, some of the older original Ringfield motor. Again, which does have a lot of noise to it. Whereas the newer ones are powered by something called like a 5-pole or something like that. Again, I don't really know much about the motor changes in these, but obviously there has been, of course, over the years. And this one, of course, is one of the later Harry Potter films, Order of the Phoenix. Only been out about 5 years. So that's definitely a noticeable, if not the, I'd say the most noticeable change. I know it's something that you can't, that you can't really see unless you take the two models apart and have a look. It's just at the moment it's just something you hear, but it's still a massive difference. Now let's see, really aesthetics really on how both the models look compared to the real Hogwarts locomotive. Well, which is really a Hall class locomotive, of course, 5972 Alton Hall. And one difference on these models, though not really a bother at all, is the shape of the cab roofs, which, as you can see, on Castle class locomotives, they're not curved. They go up and then flatten out, as you can see here, and flatten out on top. And this on the models compared to the real thing is different. Hall class locomotives have a perfectly round shape roof, whereas Castle class one's roof shapes do flatten out at the top. But this slight difference, or mistake if you want to call it, well, mainly when compared to the real thing, on a model which is really just absolutely fantastic, and that's been so popular over the last decade with all the Harry Potter films coming out, is definitely welcome. Overall, these models are just absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning machines. I would definitely recommend one. They're just absolutely brilliant. Not really sure what to do with the original one yet, because I would probably, if it ran much more reliably, I would give it a run every now and again. You know, but I just can't seem to rely on it at the moment. I may have a look inside one day, but I don't know when, because I'm just so proud of the new one. You know, despite losing my hopes because of the valve gear trouble, but it seems to have sorted itself out now, and looks superb with that light. Now, I've always been proud of the old one over the years, despite not being one of the most best runners. She's definitely. I've lost count how many times I've run this locomotive. I've always loved it, and was always getting disappointed, and if not, well, almost really fully upset when for some reason started being poor at running, and then of course we dismantled her and had a fiddle around mostly with the long bronze connector piece connecting again, of course, from the front pony truck to the main driving wheels motor area. And for some reason the buffer on this backside of the tender, for some reason, popped out of place. Well, popped completely out along with the spring. I managed to get it back in, but there were a few other occasions where it did almost pop out. And if you listen carefully, it doesn't really feel, well, as springy as it should be, and that was quite a while back. The other buffer feels much more the way it should be, much more spring-like. The other one is a little bit stiff and still doesn't really feel right. But the new one is definitely one step up, with that light sitting nicely at the bottom of the smoke box boiler door. Well done, Hornby, for doing that. This suits this locomotive, well, this type of Harry Potter locomotive really well, as the train was shown many times running in the dark throughout the Harry Potter films. It is really well done. The locomotive runs really smooth, and the light looks fantastic. However, at one point I was in position of packing the new one back in its box and sending it back to the Pufferwilly site. Because of my most recent video, which most of you may have already seen by now, you will know that I've quite recently been having valve gear trouble with the newer model. Just on this side, and I've never had that type of trouble with a Castle class engine before. Never with the original one, nor with my other Castle class engine from the Western Pullman set, 7028 Cadbury Castle, which is exactly the same body design. But once again, I'm very happy to say it hasn't happened now for about a day or two, and seems to have sorted itself out. Again, the sign of that sorting itself out was when it was just making a slight clicking noise, but wasn't coming completely apart. The engine was, of course, the engine was still able to move, and it wasn't completely collapsing. Well, that part, of course, wasn't completely coming out of its position and jamming the whole valve gear system up, and having to send it back, which I would have been utterly disappointed to do. Would have been totally gutted. So it looks like the new one's definitely staying now. These front end rod fork shaped holders, however, do feel pretty flexible. So probably withstand hopefully a fair number of any really especially unexpected problems, like the valve gear completely coming out of its placement there, and it doesn't really seem to hardly want to bend down as far as it was on the newer model, but should hopefully withstand it. Hopefully a couple of times again, and this is the old one I'm showing here, again with exactly the same flexible feel to it, but hopefully the old one it should stay fully in position now because it was bent. It was bent completely down and then up as well. But again, it does feel flexible, so hopefully it can withstand movement. But of course, there was far too much going on with the newer one. It definitely was an unexpected problem which was happening to its valve gear, especially the way it was bending these the sort of fork-shaped valve gear or rod holder part there. Since both their liveries do have quite a difference to them, dull and a little bit lighter on the newer one compared to the older ones, slightly darker and in a way more shiny. Well, has more of a shine look to it. You can put down in the comments which livery for these Hogwarts engines you prefer. A friend of mine used to have a Chamber of Secrets Harry Potter train set, and the locomotive in that was, well, it was a while ago when he had it, but the Hogwarts loco in that, I'm pretty sure was exactly identical to this Prisoner of Azkaban one. Let's have a look at how they pull. I know you've seen the older one pulling coaches before, well, Hornby and Bachmann maroon coaches to make up the Hogwarts Express, as shown here. And she's pretty heavy, this model. She's got a fair, rather than a fair amount, quite an amount of weight to her. Now the newer model, as I said before, well, I didn't really notice at first because they were kind of hard to pick out, traction tyres on the centre driving wheels. Now despite the older one not having traction tyres on, I can remember having a pulling at least up to about 7 or 8 coaches, and now despite part of my floor slightly going uphill in sort of that direction, don't really have much trouble, but it's just the floor wasn't done very well, so I sometimes build the layout to try and avoid that point sometimes. But again, having said that, going uphill for part of its journey, this model is probably of course mostly due to its weight, giving good, giving this one good traction as well, despite not having traction tyres. Well, it still gives it good pulling power, and as I said, I've had a pulling up to at least about 7 or 8 coaches at the most, and she'd probably pull. You never know, she'd probably pull a fair few more, because it's the same with the Western Pullman Castle class Cadbury Castle. That was the same, no traction tyres on the centre wheels, but I've had that one pulling up to pretty much the same amount of carriages as well, and once again, like this one, is a fantastic puller. And speaking of weight, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the older one might be that slightest bit heavier, have a slight bit more weight to it. She is very heavy, one of the heaviest locos I've ever held. Maybe a slight bit more weight to it than the newer 2007 one. So what about the new one? With those centre traction tyres, I expect a pretty good result. First of all, let's see it with an actual Hogwarts Express brake coach. As I said, the older Prisoner of Azkaban model was happy pulling about 7 or 8 coaches at times, and of course was absolutely fine when pulling the 4 Hornby, well, one Hornby and 3 Bachmann and maroon coaches that I used to make up the Hogwarts Express, absolutely fine. So let's check out the newer one, absolutely perfect. Pulling the same train of Hornby and Bachmann, well, mostly Bachmann Mark 1 maroon coaches, making the Hogwarts Express very, very easily. I'm running really smooth, and the valve gear seems absolutely fine now. It looks at the Hogwarts Express, and coming up in its videos will definitely be a success. The actual train of coaches in the Harry Potter films, of course, 4 maroon Mark 1s, just like we have here. And even though these Bachmann ones, of course, don't have the Hogwarts Railways logo on, they still look fantastic. You know, again, Bachmann coaches, of course. Again, Hornby ones are still fantastic, but Bachmann ones definitely have a more realistic look to them. The detailing on Bachmann coaches is very well done. And this train definitely represents the Hogwarts Express really well. And again, of course, it is pulled beautifully by the newer Hogwarts Castle locomotive with front light. And I'm pretty sure this traction tyre Hogwarts Castle locomotive will pull a lot more coaches. I will sometime in the near future will test her and then hopefully film her pulling a much longer train. And again, of course, this train has to look as realistic as we can get it as well. And as we were saying, Bachmann coaches, of course, do have a much more realistic look to them. And since the older one without traction tyres managed a good, well, anyway, much longer load than this, well, up to about 8 or possibly 9 coaches at the most, hauling a load like that. And this one with traction tyres, of course, should be no exception. And last thing I'm going to say before we end this video is that well, I'll look forward to another special Hogwarts Express video coming soon. See you later. Thanks for watching.